The throne room of the Galactic Empress stretched before Jackson like a cathedral of starlight and steel. Crystalline pillars reached toward a vaulted ceiling that displayed the swirling nebulae of the Andromeda sector in real. He'd seen grander places in his years as a mercenary, the floating palaces of the Zephyr Lords, the underground citadels of the Crone Empire, but none carried the weight of history quite like this. Jackson adjusted the worn leather strap of his plasma rifle, feeling distinctly out of place among the silk-robed courtiers and chrome-plated honor guards. His combat boots, scuffed from 1,000 battlefields, echoed against marble floors that had probably never known such common footfalls. "The mercenary Jackson Cole," announced the herald, his voice amplified by invisible speakers, "here to accept payment for services rendered in the Outer Rim conflicts." Jackson stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the figure seated upon the celestial throne. Empress Elizabeth Theron, ruler of 47 star systems, draped in robes of deep violet that seemed to absorb light itself. Her face was partially obscured by the traditional crown of the Andromeda dynasty, a circlet of living starlight that floated inches above her auburn hair. He'd done jobs for royalty before, tyrants who needed rebellions crushed, benevolent monarchs who needed pirates cleared from trade routes, desperate nobles fighting losing wars. They all paid the same in credits that spent just as well, whether earned in blood or bureaucracy. The Empress rose from her throne, and the entire court seemed to hold its breath. Protocol dictated she remain seated during such mundane transactions. Jackson's hand instinctively moved closer to his sidearm. "Jackson Cole," she repeated, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. There was something in her tone, a tremor, a recognition. "State your full designation." He frowned. "Ma'am, my contract clearly states your full name," she interrupted, descending the steps with a grace that seemed almost ethereal. "The one you were given at birth." A chill ran down Jackson's spine. No one knew that name. He'd been orphaned at 6 when raiders destroyed the human colony on Epsilon Prime. The orphanage on Tara had given him Cole because he'd refused to speak for 3 years, silent as coal in the darkness. Jackson, he'd chosen himself at 12 because it sounded strong, but there had been another name, once, a lifetime ago. "Jackson," the Empress said, now standing mere feet away. The starlight crown dimmed, and for the first time, he could see her face clearly. Jackson Reeves, born on Epsilon Prime, son of Marcus and Diana Reeves, orphaned in the raids of 2847, his weapon clattered to the floor. The court gasped, those eyes, green as Earth's ancient forests, a color he'd only seen once before. "Beth." The word escaped his lips as barely a whisper. "The Empress." "No." Elizabeth smiled, and tears glistened in those impossible green eyes. He remembered. The throne room disappeared, replaced by memories he'd buried under decades of survival and violence. A different room, dark and smelling of smoke and death. He'd been hiding in the grain storage when the raiders came. 7 years old, too scared to even cry. She'd been smaller then, maybe 9, her fine clothes torn and dirty. A merchant's daughter from the colony's wealthy sector, lost in the chaos like him. They'd huddled together in that storage room for 3 days while the raiders stripped the colony clean. "I won't let them hurt you," she'd promised, her small hand gripping his. "We'll get out of this, both of us." She'd shared her ration bars with him, sang soft songs when the screaming got too loud outside, made him promise that if they survived, he'd be strong, be brave, never give up. On the 3rd day, a rescue ship had arrived, a Terran diplomatic vessel that had been passing through the sector. In the confusion of the evacuation, they'd been separated. He'd screamed her name, Elizabeth Theron, the name embossed on her student ID card, but the soldiers had pulled him away, telling him everyone would be reunited at the processing center. They never were. "They told me you died in the raids," Elizabeth said, her composure cracking. "The official records listed you as deceased." "The orphanage mixed up the files," Jackson said, the pieces falling into place. "There were so many of us, so many bodies they never identified. I searched," she continued, her voice breaking. "When I inherited the throne at 18, I used every resource at my disposal. But Jackson Reeves was dead, and I never knew you'd taken another name." The court watched in stunned silence as their Empress, the Iron Lady of Andromeda, who had never shown weakness in 20 years of rule, wept openly. "You saved me that day," Jackson said. "You kept me sane, kept me human when I wanted to just disappear. And you kept me alive," Elizabeth replied. "When that raider found us on the 2nd night, you threw that metal pipe at his head. 9 years old, and you stood between me and a monster," Jackson remembered. The raider's helmet cracking, the blood, Elizabeth's scream, his small hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the pipe for a second swing that never came. The raider had fled, more shocked than injured. "I became what I am because of that promise," Jackson said. "Be strong, be brave, never give up. And I became who I am because a 7-year-old boy showed me that courage wasn't about being fearless," Elizabeth said. "It was about being terrified and still choosing to fight." She stepped forward and embraced him, decades of protocol and propriety dissolving in an instant. Jackson, who hadn't been hugged by another human being in 15 years, who'd forgotten what gentle touch felt like, stood frozen for a moment before his arms slowly wrapped around her. "You don't have to be a mercenary anymore," Elizabeth whispered. "You have a home here, with me, with your family." Jackson pulled back, meeting her eyes. "I'm not the scared kid you knew, Beth. I've done things, dark things. I'm covered in scars that don't show, and I'm not the merchant's daughter who sang lullabies," Elizabeth replied. "I've ordered strikes that killed millions to save billions. I've made choices that haunt my dreams." She smiled through her tears. "We're both different, but we're both still alive, still fighting, still keeping that promise." The throne room remained silent, but Jackson could feel the shift in the air. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a transformation. The Empress had shown her court that beneath the crown and the power, she was human. Beautifully, vulnerably human. "I accept your offer," Jackson said finally. "On one condition. Name it. You let me finish this last job first. There's a colony on Titan's moon being threatened by pirates. Families hiding in storage rooms, waiting for someone to save them." He smiled. "Someone taught me once that you don't abandon people who need you." Elizabeth laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that hadn't been heard in the throne room for years. "Then finish your job, mercenary. But when you come back, you come home." As Jackson retrieved his weapon and turned to leave, the court began to whisper. Tomorrow, the news would spread across 47 star systems. The Empress had wept, had shown her heart, had proven that even in the cold darkness of space, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or its empires. It was its ability to remember, to honor promises made in the dark, to never abandon those who mattered. Jackson paused at the throne room's entrance and looked back. Elizabeth stood tall, the starlight crown blazing above her head once more, every inch the Empress. But she smiled at him with Beth's eyes, and for the first time in 30 years, Jackson felt like he was finally coming home.